Have you all got any more of them pixels? No, I don't have any more of them pixels, unfortunately. Let us get to start with. Today we're going to be talking about APU History Unit 8. And we'll be talking about the Cold War and everything that happened in between. Now, as you know, the Cold War was a really cold war. There was never a hot war. This Cold War, was primarily between the two supergiants. Big Uncle Sam America and Big Bolshevik Bear Russia. Or technically the Soviet Union back then. And these two supergiants were going ahead and going head to head on about pretty much every big hot issue at the time. Arms race, yeah, they've done it. A scientific race, they've done it. A space race, they've done it. Everything was a race towards them. And though they never did actual wars with each other, they did have a few wars between their own little supporters. Like, they went ahead and backed up different supporters in different regions. Like, I'm not going to talk about the Vietnam War, the Korean War, because that's not what I want to focus on. But what I will say is that those were one of the few wars where they went ahead and gave influence to, such as the Americans going ahead and giving influence to the non-communist South, with the communist Soviet Union giving their support to the communist North, just for the pure reason that they were communist and not communist, regardless whether they were dictators or not. Dictators were unfortunately accepted by the communists, but it was not accepted by the non-communists. So it became a little problem for the South Vietnam, but it became a pretty big win for the North Vietnamese. What they ended up doing in South Korea, though, was pretty different. To this day, there's this still peace armistice treaty that prevent the Koreas from going to war. And I'm pretty sure neither side is going to go ahead and break that treaty anytime soon. But South and North Korea still exist to this day. But let's stop talking about those. That's until way later. Right after World War II, as you can imagine, the entire world's economy was bust. And someone with a lot of money needed to be able to go ahead and fix this. So the Americans decided that the first priority was to go ahead and rebuild the world. How did they go about doing that? They went ahead and used something called the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan. Now, the Marshall Plan was a plan that went ahead and granted sufficient economic aid towards the west of Europe, because they split West Europe and East Europe, and West Europe becoming, well, the capitalist people with really big economies and being able to fix themselves up really quick. And then the East being the Communist Party, controlled by the Communist Party, that became that was unfortunately not able to accept the Marshall Plan, because the Russians didn't want the Marshall Plan to be a thing towards them. So the Russians, or the Soviets, I suppose, went ahead and did their own Comecon, their own financial aid plan, Comecon, which kind of worked. It was able to rebuild everything, so. Then they started doing this arms race thingy, because now there was a bunch of new technologies and they needed to be able to defend themselves, and so they created a bunch of these fancy new technologies. And we even had a little red scare because of all these new technologies, because, well, the atomic bomb, when the Soviets went and created their own atomic bomb and tested it out, they got the method of creating the atomic bomb from American spies. And so Marshall Plan became a pretty big success, and Levin himself went ahead and created a bunch of these good missiles. And the Americans even created their own missiles as well too. And essentially they created a system where they could go ahead and destroy the entire world with just launching all these. So the guy who created the hydrogen bomb for the United States of America even tried to get this proposal towards the American government to go ahead and create this biobomb that would kill everyone on Earth. Even the government thought that was a little too much, because, well, you already have enough to destroy the entire world. Why would you want to make something that can destroy the entire world in one go? In the end, they went ahead and decided that this was not worth doing. So what did they do? When the Soviet Union leader became Mikhail Gorbachev, fortunately enough for them, this guy was reform-minded, they went ahead and decided to sign some SALT agreements, which went ahead and limited the number of nuclear warheads and missiles that each country could have. They dismantled a bunch of them, then they did a SALT II agreement, which dismantled them even further, and what ended up became one of the greatest and one of the most cunning and ambitious nuclear and missile programs reduction, like the number of missiles reduction. And another thing that you can't leave out of the about the Cold War was the 1964 civil rights movement. This civil rights movement gave ahead and gave way more rights towards African Americans and other minorities as well too, but primarily African Americans because they were the primary people who were segregated against our. And even Martin Luther King Jr. became a pretty big role in this after the Montgomery boycott, which lasted about over a year. And then the buses were like, okay, we can't deal with this anymore. We'll desegregate. Okay, yeah, we're happy with that. And it worked. Everyone started being able to go ahead and start enjoying better rights. And nowadays, African people of color can now even go ahead and enjoy everything in their lives. Can go ahead and enjoy the same things that white people can do, and it is considered okay. Very unconventional for the time back then. And one more thing that I have to add about though is the space race, because whereas the Soviet Union went ahead and created Sputnik and literally sent it into space and even sent this first man into space, the Americans were the first ones to create the goal. They went ahead and they did the big thing: land on the moon, land a man on another terrestrial object that on an extraterrestrial object. The American flag is still standing there to this day. So in the end, the Americans won, and Mikhail Gorbachev himself inevitably created the destruction of the Soviet Union. What happened in the end? Well, we finished the Cold War, and now next time we'll be talking about the aftermath of the war. So until then, Shihana, peace. Bye bye.